This is the Big Small Business Show, and this is our panel discussion today. We are talking all things SONA, all things budget speech, and now we are going to be talking about Corona and hopefully end our panel discussion with some good news. Okay, so let's talk about Corona, okay? Because, you know, as much as I don't want to be part of the hype machine that I think is evolving right now, it's definitely starting to affect us in different ways. I quite frankly haven't felt any distribution channel affecting me right now, as in, you know, I'm not getting products. But I think you mentioned during the break that we lost R1 trillion because of it, just in the JSE. How did we lose R1 trillion because of Corona?
Well, it seems that there's a frenzy, and I see that even the World Health Organization has issued a statement that financial markets should calm down, which was actually quite bizarre that the World Health Organization issued that. But we've seen that globally, we've lost something like $1 trillion in just a few. So it seems to be a very frenzy that people are anticipating a lot of business lost and business complexities coming forward, and that we're seeing a lot of people even planning and cancelling, whether it's fairs, whether it's business initiatives, conferences, tourism. We've seen 2 airlines going to business rescue in Hong Kong. Emirates is talking about cancelling flights. So a lot of commerce and also shipping, where people are saying, but can we ship stuff without giving contagion, moving it from one? So are we stopping? We saw that with the fruit industry in the Western Cape being impacted by a decrease in exports as a result of this. So there's a lot of frenzy going on, and the rational person saying, but why? Given what we're talking about, if you look at 7 billion people and what we're talking about, as you said, we're talking about a deceased rate of 2%. It just seems that people are so afraid of being in the 2% and its impact. It's rather people closing borders. The reaction from governments and business has actually driven this whole thing.
Well, I mean, I heard the Western Cape, I think the tourism department is in Parliament at the moment saying they're going to be losing millions because of the tourism industry. They're just not getting, the Chinese was the biggest market, the biggest tourism coming in. It's just not happening anymore. And that's going to impact small businesses.
And other things, so tourism I get, supply chain I understand, fairs, in other words, let's call it business commerce and fairs and conferences and things like that. Sports industry would also be affected.
Yeah. We've had the Italian league playing behind closed stadiums with no supporters in the stadium.
Sure. So it's not going to be business as usual for a while. But one of the views... But one of the views is that it just creates pent-up pressure in the system, and then when it normalizes, it sort of comes back, rushing back, almost like a tsunami.
We hope that's the case, yeah.
Okay. So now we've got a few minutes left, and I really, you know, every time one of you is here, it's generally bad news, you know. I don't want this
I did
to
have
be
good news once.
once in all these years, once. You've got a complex about this. But so let's talk about what is positive, because, you know, despite what you're saying, I am seeing within many businesses that I'm involved in record years, really good stuff going, export opportunities increasing because of a weakened rand, etc. So it depends also where you focus. Now, I get that the general doesn't sound so good, but there are pockets where things are good. As you said before, the robotics, if you're in robotics, these are good times, right? Where else? Okay, leave us with hope.
Well, if you take, I think you raised it, Sharon.
Individuals.
And it came out of a media report, was at COSATU, saying, well, if we have to fire all these ESCOM people, why don't we employ them at the IPPs type of thing? But the other thing is exactly what we said. So let's say we need to reduce from the 1.8 million people working, or 2 point something working just in the provincial and national government. We have to get rid of 300,000. They can't be taken up in big business. Well, that once again, maybe that's the kind of situation that forces them to actually go into small business. Maybe that is the opportunity to say, well, maybe it is time to start your own business. Use the skills that you have obtained. and start doing a small business. So maybe that is the upside, is saying, but let's grow small business, maybe not because we wanted to, because we have to.
So maybe the message to all the people in government right now is, if you're being horrible to small business, maybe it's time to start being nice to us, because maybe in a few months' time you'll be sitting on our side of the
Pay them on time.
yeah, pay them on time, be good to us.
Cash flow is king and remains so for any business.
Yeah. And in terms of the weakening rand, in terms of export opportunities outside of so-called corona-affected regions?
Yeah, no, look, I think it's positive.
Are we seeing
yeah,
stuff happening?
It's definitely going to become more positive as it gets worse and worse. And I see again, it's slipped again today. But it's the opportunities are there, and small businesses need to take this opportunity and use them wisely.
And if you were exporting, what would you be exporting right now, other than masks?
Well, I think if you look globally where things are going, it's into some form of intellectual property. So, I mean, we saw some training app being launched in Europe, etc. So IP is where things are going from an asset. I mean, you can only export so many things, but even then, developing things, if you look at the movie tourism industry in Cape Town, it was because it was so cheap to come do it here. So that is the benefit of a low rand. But once again, the same, if you're selling technology and IP and development time and skills, you're exporting at 15 rand 60 to the dollar. Which means you can still access markets quite cheaply, and whether you're selling time or selling products. But I think innovation at the end of the day is key. Whether you're small business or otherwise, you need to innovate and see what people are using. And locally, people will buy if they actually see value in your product.
So for those of you who've been listening to this panel discussion who are feeling a little depressed, please don't, because one must agree that there are many parts of our economy that are not doing well and are affected by all these things. But there are many, many parts that are actually thriving right now. And it's for you to focus on those areas, find those areas and focus on those areas. It's in times like this that many, many great businesses start to find the opportunity that takes them to greatness. Well, that's it for our panel discussion today. Please remember, if you think it, write it down and make it a reality. On the Hour Show this week,
Morningside Shopping Centre decided they wanted to build an organic rooftop market. They handed the entire thing to the grade 9s of our school. Each company had to learn to innovate, they had to learn how to design, they had to learn how to look at financial statements. They had to give all the ideas back to the company.
The second one is collaborative consumption, and that would suggest that a poor individual, an unemployed individual, could never justify the ownership of an expensive asset. But if they can get the community to use the asset, then they can justify that ownership, and because the community has got access to that asset, it's the same thing as owning the asset.
The Big Small Business Show is brought to you by Chartered Accountants of South Africa. Transform the future of your business. Partner with the CASA today.
Everywhere you go, MTN.